we've got Cerda from Renewabl, Killian Daly from EnergyTag, and also a representative of the GHG Protocol Scope 2 working group, and Sam Kimmins from Climate Group, both RE100 and 24/7 Carbon Free Coalition, and Joe Kwiatkowski from Matched Energy. Brilliant.
Okay, so today we're basically talking about navigating corporate reporting, but I think the subject goes a little bit deeper. And I love moderating because I don't have any questions. I just ask the challenging questions. But also I want to, a bit later on, involve the public, because I'm sure there's quite a lot of people representing buyers and sellers, and I'm sure you have some pressing questions around the subject. So, Killian, let's start with you. In simple terms, what is actually changing? You know, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 2 update, there's a lot of talk about that. What's actually changing for corporates?
Yeah, sure. So just to maybe take a step back, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is the standard used by 97% of the Fortune 500 companies to do their emissions reporting. It's part of legislations like the EU CSRD and the California reporting rules as well. So it's very much the norm used by almost all companies to do their Scope 2 emissions reporting. It has been criticized in the past for a lack of accuracy, and this is one of the reasons why they are updating it. So that process actually started about 2 years ago. Last year, about 12 months ago, they put together a technical working group of experts from kind of around the world, from different parts of the energy sector, to look at, well, how do we improve the reporting? How do we make it more relevant for the 2030s and 2040s? Because it was designed really for a different era when renewables were kind of just taking off. So I'm a member of that. We're also a member as EnergyTag of the SBTi technical working group. And so basically today, at a very high level, you do annual accounting. So that's how that works, right? So you can use clean energy produced at any time of year, any other time of year. The proposal, which is out next week, so this is for public consultation. There's still a bit left in the process, but the initial proposal will move to hourly reporting from annual reporting after a certain phase-in. Also, it will address some of the geographical boundaries. So, for example, the United States today is considered one fully connected region. The European Union, or Europe, is considered one region, including places like Iceland that are not physically connected to Europe. And that would go back down to like a price zone or a bidding zone level. That's the proposal on that, and kind of similar breakup in the US. There are other elements. It's a bit longer than that, but that's kind of the two headline changes. There's also a number of things to note about how that will be constructed. So number one, there will be a phase-in. Most likely something like 2030. This is not something that would happen straight away. There will be a very significant carve-out for SMEs. So likely most companies would not have to do this hourly accounting, but most demand would, because basically 10% of companies consume about 90% of the electricity globally. Also, there's things like load profiles that, you know, if you don't have hourly data at hand, you can use a load profile like for electricity billing. And long-term contracts will be grandfathered. So if you have a long-term PPA, it's not going to fall afoul of any new rules that would be grandfathered into the new era. And the final thing I want to say, and then I'll stop, is that this is not and will never be some mandate on any company to be 24/7 hourly matched with renewable energy. This is just about counting in a more accurate way. So that's kind of a headline of the proposal that will be coming out next week for public comment.
Amazing, thank you. Sam, I'm going to go and ask your opinion on what is driving corporates right now from the corporate RE100 perspective. So we're talking about regulation here. We're talking about reputation, risk, complexity, all these things that we have been discussing a lot. What's your view on that? What was the position? How are you seeing the reactions?
Yeah, so just again, taking a little step back, RE100, most of you I think will know RE100 now, but it brings together over 440 companies from around the world committed to using 100% renewable electricity. And their combined electricity demand is around 570 terawatt hours per year. that's equivalent to South Korea or Germany. So if we were a country, we'd be the 10th largest country in the world, all committed to using 100% renewable electricity. So that's done an incredible job of driving change around the world. We speak with energy ministries on a weekly basis, advising on how they can increase corporate access to renewables. We were in Korea a few weeks ago. We work in Japan, Indonesia, etc., advising how can they have markets that have these incredible figures for PPAs. Okay, there's a bit of a dip, but those figures, the growth of the PPA market over the past decade has been incredible, and we're trying to replicate that around the world. Now, the reason these companies are doing it, RE100 companies are kind of a special case in a way. They're the forward-looking companies who they see this as a benefit to their business. One of our Japanese companies said very straightforwardly, this RE100 and reporting to RE100 is our passport to international trade. By having a 100% target, they were getting custom from European and US companies that wanted renewables in their supply chain. Other companies are doing it for reputation, and others are doing it because they want to know what they're using, and they want to tell the world, hey, we want to use this, because that combined demand signal, if I go to Moti in Korea and say, look, our members represent 10% of your electricity demand, and they would like this, then we're listened to. So that reporting is incredibly important for driving a market signal. Now, we've recently launched the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition, which is early days looking at how do companies report and drive towards 24/7 matching of their renewable consumption and demand. Now, this isn't replacing RE100. This is for RE100 members who have achieved close to or at 100% in markets where it's relatively easy to get to 100% on markets with high renewables penetration. We don't see this becoming mainstream for a while, but this is the start of the next tranche. And companies are doing that because, one, they want to hedge against change. They want to be ahead of the game as the greenhouse gas protocol changes. Secondly, they want a realistic idea of what they're using and when. How are their PPAs, their new PPAs matching what they're actually using? And they also want to send a signal that actually we want to be using renewables 24/7, and some of them are overtly saying because we don't want to be using gas or coal at any point during the day. They want to be properly, fully 24/7, 100% carbon free.
Absolutely. And from my perspective, something that would make life easier for corporates would be information, data, and suppliers. Right?
Yes.
And this is where Joe comes in. Joe, I'm a big fan of Match Energy. Do you want to tell people what it is? Yeah. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it.
We're the newcomers here. We take a complementary perspective. We're focused on suppliers rather than corporates, but with a view to making all of this accessible to the SMEs and even domestic customers out there. So we're focused on suppliers here in the UK. We kind of shortcut a lot of these conversations in some way because we just go straight to public data to determine how suppliers here in the UK are delivering power to their customers on a half-hourly basis. We're an independent not-for-profit that has developed a methodology you can find on our website, match.energy. It's been reviewed by experts across the sector that rates suppliers on their ability to deliver renewable power. We launched on October the 27th, a couple of weeks' time, releasing the Matched Clean Power Index, which provides a half-hourly rating score for 26 suppliers here in the UK. That's covering 213 terawatt hours of consumption. Some suppliers are doing an excellent job, a really excellent job, and their success stories are kind of being lost amongst a sea of identical but very different claims. And it's been very exciting to work with consumers and the organizations that represent them too, to figure out how we can make this data useful.
Thank you. And I've seen the index and it's absolutely brilliant. It's taking the visibility cloak out of suppliers and showing exactly where everything comes from. And it's fantastic on a half-hour basis. So on that point, Joe, tell us a little bit more about the evolution of the supply side. So we just said that it's going to be more, the focus is going to be more on high energy consumers. But what is going to be the drive for smaller SMEs?
Well, I think that the suppliers that I'm speaking to are already tracking this as a need from their customers, and many have been working on this issue for years and have, in the last couple of years, been releasing tariffs that provide hourly transparency. So in many ways, we're just adding momentum to changes that are already happening. One of the most interesting things about the index that we're launching in 2 weeks is that it shows material differences in the quality of power delivered by suppliers at very similar price points. So you have suppliers who are 70 or even 80% matched with renewables on a half-hourly basis, selling in the same market at the same price point, doing substantial volumes, 5 to 10 terawatt hours a year, selling in the same market at the same price point as other suppliers that are doing 30 or 40% renewables, half-hourly matched. So there's tremendous differentiation that exists in the market that is currently not fully appreciated because we're working within an outdated regulatory framework that reconciles annually rather than half-hourly.
Fair enough. I absolutely agree. Thank you. Next question is for everyone. There's a lot of noise around Scope 2 greenhouse gas protocol update. Some corporates that we've been speaking to think it's something that is going to sneak around the corner and they're going to be forced to do in the next day. They've been greenwashing, whatever, right? So what are the biggest myths and misconceptions that you guys have heard, and what should we clear out straight away?
I can start, kind of hear a lot of them. Yeah, well, the first one is that no one's going to have to do 24/7 matching tomorrow morning. That's just not on the table, even though that is sometimes kind of used as a pushback to what's being proposed. I think at the end of the day, we do need to move towards reality a bit more. If you look at, I won't name specific names, but the IEA put out a report, Energy and AI, recently. So the top 5 big tech companies, they've already been 100% renewable, all of them, some of them for nearly 10 years. And so that's just not representing what's going on. It's just not, right? They have done a lot of renewable procurement, which is great. They've led in a lot of these markets, which is really, really good. But we do have to change the metrics, because ultimately to actually get to 0 or 100%, you need to think about things like demand flexibility. You need to think about things like storage. And their renewable energy markets today almost never include storage or flexibility. In most European countries, you can't even get a certificate for storage. And that's ultimately not going to have a situation where these markets are tackling the real drivers of the affordability crisis in electricity. The real drivers are not midday solar, the real drivers are gas peaking. And today's markets are kind of skirting around that problem. So we do need this evolution, but we also need to respect that companies have made commitments by 2030, for example, a lot of them. And yeah, changing rules 6 months before that target date wouldn't be reasonable either. So I think we do need a transition. It will be painful a bit to move away from this 100% claim, but I think that's ultimately what's going to be most healthy and most credible in the long run.
I think one of the myths that we see is that companies will do this without the frameworks. And one of the drives is actually to go the other way, which is to actually get rid of market boundaries. Because the argument is that companies will do the right thing in the right place to reduce carbon the most. Some of the ministries that we speak with, particularly island nations, the large export economies and islands in Asia, are very nervous about the idea that country boundaries might be removed from something like RE100. If you're allowed to buy your renewables, let's take a slightly silly example, buy Norwegian hydro and count that in Taiwan, or buy Chinese hydro and count that in I'm not going to say Taiwan, but politically count that in Japan, then there is no wire, there is no cable going between the two, and those ministries are acutely aware that all investment in renewables in those countries would dry up if companies could simply pretend that there's a cable going across continents. Because yes, Japan, Korea, which is a virtual island, Taiwan, etc., renewables are expensive right now, but they need scale to get cheaper. The bigger the scale of the industry, the cheaper those renewables are. You need to build that. You can't just pretend you're buying them somewhere cheaper. So this is incredibly important. There are practical reasons why this accounting is needed. It's not just a bunch of geeks getting in a back room and going, oh, we need to make this a bit harder for companies. You know, this is reflecting the reality of what electricity does.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a geek, I'll jump right in. I think the two of the things that
not geeks.
The two things I hear a lot are that hourly matching in some way displaces annual matching. It doesn't. Annual matching remains valuable. Keep on doing it. Just also do hourly matching, because hourly matching is based in physics. It tells you what's really happening, and it will lead you to your next opportunities to make a difference. And then the second thing is that people think, it's going to be adopting this new standard will be instantly vastly more expensive, and that's just not the case, because if you're increasing half-hourly matching by a few percentage points, you could even potentially get that for free. And like I say, we see material differences between suppliers that are operating in the same market at the same price points. So it is possible.
Before EnergyTag, so now obviously I'm working with a kind of a non-profit. Before that, I used to work for a French company called Air Liquide, which is a very large electro-intensive company, consuming more electricity than Ireland, where I'm from, about 40 terawatt hours a year. So I used to buy power. That was the job before, like real electricity in real electricity markets. And that's all about hourly matching. That's all about deliverability. That's all about the changes that are actually being proposed here. And then I would move over to the carbon accounting world a few weeks a year, and it's completely detached, right? Like, so it's not, this is actually extremely practical. Europe 2 weeks ago moved to 15-minute trading on electricity markets, so 35,000 periods now sliced in the year, and the green power market is still one, right? So this is not some theoretical, idealistic idea. This is literally the nuts and bolts of power markets, and just trying to bring these two worlds back together, again, with the right phase-ins and reasonable flexibilities. But what we're proposing here is not something radically new. It's actually going back to some of the basics of how the power market and system works.
Nobody is looking for companies to do this tomorrow. In the 24/7 Carbon Free Coalition, stage one that companies are signing up to now is just to measure what you're doing. Measure it, find out where your gaps are. We don't anticipate anybody setting 100% 24/7 target even in the next couple of years, and those targets will likely be somewhere in the future. This isn't about trying for the impossible. This is about building the markets that enable this to be a reality and to reflect the reality of what electricity does and how electricity markets work.
Absolutely. And there's really good platforms that can show you exactly how well matched you are. Maybe there's one called Renewabl that I've heard about. Challenge of cost, right? The misconception that there was an article recently that said that companies are going to pay 600% more if they move down the route of hourly matching, or if they want to be 100% matched, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But what we've seen with the current pricing system now, that's not the case. What do you guys think about that main point, the cost? Is it a concern? Right now, we don't have a dynamic pricing system where we can have one price per hour. That's the evolution that we're heading towards. But with the current state of the market right now, if I want to be 100% hourly matched, what would the cost implications be?
Right now? Well, I think, the number you quoted is basically cherry-picked. If we had to just have an isolated system and build wind and solar and then build batteries to squeeze out every single hour to be matched to a baseload, yes, it would be very expensive. Everyone knows that. Anyone who understands electricity knows that. But that's not what we're saying, right?
Correct.
We're saying let's start to just be a bit more realistic here. Set a target. Obviously, the more matching you do, in general, the higher the PPA price will be, for example, right? But there's also then elements about, well, I'm actually hedging myself better against volatile electricity markets. And that's something we need to think about. The PPA market is, well, in a spot of bother in some places because a solar PPA, even at a low price, is not actually providing a lot of value. So I think that's something else that hourly matching can bring in. It's this more like, what am I actually covering myself with these long-term contracts? The price might be a bit higher, but the value might also be a bit higher. Just again, to like just reiterate again, nobody is saying that you have to be 24/7 matched with batteries, tomorrow morning.
Correct.
One story just to show the art of the possible in places like the Sun Belt. So unfortunately, not Ireland or England. Batteries are getting so cheap and solar is already very cheap that, for example, at the moment there's a project under construction in Abu Dhabi to have a 98% baseload solar plant that will produce electricity for about $75 a megawatt hour. So in very sunny places, 24/7 solar is actually not that far away. Yeah. So I think that's just something to keep in mind as well. 80% of the world lives in sunny parts of the world. So yeah, round-the-clock renewables are coming. It's still in an early stage, but that is going to come, and it's going to make this much cheaper. But yeah, we just need to accept reality and accept that you have a different matching target for different parts of the world, rather than just saying I need to be 100%, and I'm going to do that by buying a 30 or 40% or 30 or 40 cent per megawatt hour Norwegian geo.
And I think from the point of view of RE100 and 24/7 carbon-free correlation, this isn't about ticking boxes. And companies often make the mistake that I must get my 100%. And yet, sure, the way bonuses are arranged, the way incentives are arranged, sometimes it is tagged to your 100% target. But for RE100, I'll use that as a proxy. If a company comes to us and goes, look, we're operating in this country, we're 100% everywhere else, we can't get it here, and we're going to miss our target, we won't beat them over the head. We will provide them cover, and we will go to that government and say, look, our members are having trouble because your policies are not enabling them to achieve their goals. They're prepared to invest money in renewables, and you're not allowing them. So let's see some change. And that's very effective. We're not here to go, oh, you're 89.7%. You need to spend whatever it takes to get to 100%. It's about changing the system, not about ticking boxes.
That is exactly the second point that I wanted to make, right? With all the corporates that we speak to, that's their secondary concern, or even their main concern, is, okay, I've been working so hard to become 100% renewable, and now you're saying that I'm not actually 100% renewable, right? I'm 80, 75, 90%. I'm not going to do anything until I have to, because I want to be using on that bonus, basically. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. I think, suppliers in a similar situation, right? They're working within regulation that allows them, requires them, in some cases, to compete against on these 100% renewable claims. But some have the initiative and the foresight to go beyond that. We are, at the end of the day, working with physics. Physics is unbendable, so we are going to have to adjust. Sure, some will only adjust once the regulation requires it, but some, actually an impressive number of them, have been working on this for some time.
There's huge kudos for companies that have achieved their RE100 target, the 100% target. That kudos will remain. We will be reporting in parallel the 100% targets under annual matching and 24/7 targets for those who move to that next step. We're expressing it very much as a next step. And I think this is where the NGO community, like Climate Group, RE100, comes into play. We can explain why this is good, for why the companies are doing a good thing and not stepping back. We have that. We can provide that credibility and impartiality to say, actually, no, this is credible. This is right. Again, it's not about ticking the box. This is about creating change. This is about driving towards 100% carbon-free grids, and we will continue to emphasise that. So the companies don't get a kicking for doing something that's really ambitious. They will get credit for doing something that's really ambitious, and credit for what they've already achieved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm having a difficult time being the moderator and not in the panel. I need to remind myself that I'm moderating. Okay, I think we've got like 3 or 4 minutes for questions. It'll be great to get the public involved. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. This is an amazing panel. Okay, we're going to need more than 4 minutes.
Thank you, David Shipworth, University College London. So the government's now rejected both nodal and zonal pricing through the REMA process. That leaves us with what's called reformed national pricing model. Now, if hypothetically speaking, there was a high-level meeting coming up in the next month with government, what messages would you want to pass to them about how we should think about the regulatory reform which would align with the accountancy standards?
Can I take a go? One of the reasons that Matched has attracted interest is it's another view on the same fundamental physical constraints we're working with here that zonal pricing was addressing. It's a smaller lever that we have, but it is nonetheless a lever, roughly £1 billion lever. If you look over the runway we have up to Clean Power 2030. So one of the questions we've been asked is, can we make our index regional? Can we start looking at the degree to which suppliers are matching renewable generation with demands on a zonal basis? It's not the same as what was being proposed under REMA, but it gets at the same things.
Thank you. I'll stand up so you can see me. Tom Parsons from Good Energy. So thank you. Great discussion and great to see that we're moving in the right direction. Joe, you got your website launching and actually giving some transparency, and obviously got the industry engagement, which is great, and the methodology. My question really is, the transition seems to be making sure that companies are comfortable. 2030 gives them a deadline that makes them feel comfortable, because there's a lot of edge cases where they say we can't do it on island nations. But the UK is a very mature market. So what's your view on how we encourage people to use the methodology now, where we have the tools, the suppliers and the processes to enable it? They can sign contracts tomorrow.
Well, obviously, we would very much encourage companies to join our 24/7 carbon-free coalition and start doing this in the UK and in other markets where we've already reached a relatively high renewables penetration. Most of our UK members, or members with operations in the UK, are at 100% annual matching in the UK. We don't expect anybody to be doing this tomorrow. It's not, and in many countries, many markets, it's not possible. But now is the time to actually start doing it, start experimenting, start working out what works. At the very least, what that does is provides companies with a credible voice when speaking with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol to say, well, this works less well, rather than just, we're a bit scared by this type voice. Prepare, let's get this. And companies are already finding there are advantages on understanding their electricity use in a more granular way.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the UK, well, thanks to Joe and many others, it's an interesting case because, either both the suppliers have it in-house, and now there'll be a public index as well of these hourly matching scores. So even a small company can just send an email or make a phone call and find out where they're at today, right?
Or log on to match.energy.
Or log on to match.energy.
And I hear there are some...
it can be a leadership case in the UK, right?
I do hear that there are some companies in the UK that are offering 24/7 match products as well to companies.
Yeah,
so,
I heard that as well.
There we go.
Yeah, we were hearing from Bruno earlier that obviously we're at quite a sort of sensitive inflection point in terms of corporate renewable buying. And I'm just wondering what the impact would be in terms of, reducing corporates' appetite for the size of a corporate PPA, but also their appetite for cross-border PPAs. And let me just sort of give you an illustrative example from my own situation. So EY is, it's Phil Domney from EY. Sorry, didn't introduce myself. We did our own PPA back in 2020, and we did it to literally match on an annual basis 100% our consumption. We don't consume that much in the UK, 13 gigawatt hours, but we literally signed up to a PPA of 13 gigawatt hours. If we were in this position today, how big would our PPA be, and how big a project would we have enabled? How much additionality? It wouldn't have been 13 gigawatt hours. So you could say, well, actually, then it sort of would have a negative impact. The other example I would give is corporates who are across Europe. and who in individual countries do not have enough volume for a PPA, but collectively across 3 or 4 AIB countries, they can enable a PPA. So playing a bit of devil's advocate, so I can understand the theory of 24/7, absolutely backing it, as Sam knows, I understand it's an additional reporting on top of annual. But could there be a sort of almost a negative reaction at a sensitive time and actually further reduce corporate PPA volume? So, sorry, a bit of a long question, but...
First of all, PPAs represent about 1/4 of renewable electricity procurement globally. So most is green tariffs and unbundled certificates. To focus in on the PPA point, so yeah, like if there was a change of market boundaries, first of all, any PPA signed today that is not in the same market would be grandfathered. So there'd be no worry on that. The second point is that if you did want to sign a PPA in Poland and you have only load in Ireland, you could still do that. There will be a second reporting metric in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol called consequential or impact reporting that will enable you to calculate the avoided emissions of that action, basically. So you can't quite say that I'm consuming it because that doesn't really make sense, but you can still make a claim on that. So there will be a way of still valuing those types of procurements, and I think that's a really important point. My final point is something from my kind of background as an electricity buyer. I do think that fundamentally the best way to a healthy long-term PPA market is to actually deliver clean power to people around the clock that actually hedges their operational power needs. That is going to always be a deeper market for electricity. People are always going to want to commit more in the long run to that type of power than power that they can't consume for their operations, right? Because that's always more complicated to go to an investment committee and ask for power that you can't consume. So I do think ultimately we need to have an ultra focus on a PPA market that is delivering more hedging value, that is less exposed to cannibalization, because I think that, in my view, is the main driver of the drop we're seeing. It's because the numbers are not penciling anymore, and that's because of a lack of flexibility.
Thank you.
Storage flexibility.
We're heading now to a coffee break, so you can ask more questions. But thank you very much, and please round of applause to the great panelists. Thank you. Thank you, guys.